Hi everyone, if you couldn't tell by the video title, today we'll be discussing the possibility of a Majora's Mask game in a Breath of the Wild style open world. I think having a game like this would make for an incredible Zelda game never seen before, if executed correctly. I'll be talking about how this game could work if it was released as the next mainline Zelda game. The world should ideally take place in the same world Majora's Mask took place in, Termina. It is a parallel world to Hyrule, as most of you already know if you've played the game. This game would take place in an open world style Termina map, so it wouldn't be the exact same map, but it would be Termina, it wouldn't be Hyrule. And it would have a lot of the main map features of the original Majora's Mask. Clocktown could become a massive town in the center of the map. It would be where you spend the most time exploring and completing quests, like in the original Majora's Mask. The time travel mechanic of Majora's Mask and all the time constraints and everything would be implemented into this Breath of the Wild style game. This is the first time that we would ever see a mechanic like this in the new Zelda format of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. If possible, it could even be extended to a 7-day mechanic, which is what was originally intended for Majora's Mask, but it was never actually done due to the hardware limitations at the time of the N64. Whether it's a 3-day or a 7-day mechanic, having this mechanic would be the key aspect of the game. It would add so much depth to the puzzles, quests and dungeons, and it would also add so much challenge. It would be so great to see this mechanic in a world as expansive and detailed as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's type of world. Instead of runes like we had in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, we should have actual transformation masks like in the original Majora's Mask. And anyway, I think people would be getting tired of having the same type of rune system as we've had for the past 2 Zelda games, so I think this would be a good idea anyway. Only this time they could go really crazy with the masks, even crazier than they did in the original Majora's Mask. So the possibilities are endless. A Rito mask that allows you to fly is, well, actually it's the only idea that I actually have of a mask. I can't think of any others right now. They could also bring back a lot of the original masks, which would play great in a Breath of the Wild style open world. I don't think this game has to necessarily follow the exact same story as Majora's Mask, but the plot should be roughly the same. The Skull Kid threatens to crash the moon on Termina. The moon can always be seen and it gets closer and closer each day, like in Majora's Mask. They could always add stuff to it. This is a game that came out in the year 2000. We're in 2023. The next Zelda game, I don't know when it's going to be, like 2026, something like that. So obviously, to make it more modern, they're probably going to add some stuff into the game. Now, I don't think it should be the exact same in everything. I don't think that this game should just be Majora's Mask in a bigger world. That seems more like a big remake than a complete reboot, which is what I'm going for. So I'd say still keep sort of the new format that has been established since Breath of the Wild. So not necessarily going like making a traditional game in a bigger world. It should still be that same sort of open world Zelda that has been established since Breath of the Wild. I saw an idea from a user suggesting to add shrines into this game by having moon shrines appear where the moon's tears would fall in the original game. If you didn't know, Majora's Mask had this thing where the moon would drop tears every once in a while. Instead of making it a collectible, they could make them into moon shrines, which I believe is an excellent idea. It also changes things up from how shrines worked in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Overall, a great idea. I know this is all speculation, so we don't know if we will ever get a game like this, although I think it's possible. But either way, I think we should figure out a good name for this Majora's Mask in a Breath of the Wild style open world game. An easy thing they could do is just make it a reboot of Majora's Mask. A reboot is basically a remake of a game, but the game as a whole is remade from the ground up and rebooted. It's not like a sequel or anything. It takes the concept of the original game, but reinvents it. Because it's a reboot, it could even still have the same name as the original game. Therefore, it would just be called The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. I think this title alone would make the game sell incredibly well. I don't know what else they could call it. Calling it Majora's Mask 2 wouldn't really make much sense since, as I said, this isn't a sequel to Majora's Mask. But here are a few name ideas I thought that could be pretty good. The first one, and I think this is probably the best name idea, and you guys can leave some name ideas in the comments down below, because I know these are probably not the best name ideas, but there's some of the name ideas that I have come up with. And the first one, and I think this is the best one, because the others I don't think are as good as this one, The Legend of Zelda Menacing Moon. Now, I think the reason I like this one, first of all, because it makes sense. The moon is menacing, although the moon itself isn't actually the menacing part. I don't want to spoil the game for anyone that hasn't played it, but you know, it's not really the moon itself. But yeah, the moon is sort of menacing, but it's not the moon's fault, if that makes sense. But what I like about this game is that it has the alliteration with the letter M, the same as Majora's Mask had the alliteration with the letter M. So it's sort of like, I guess, similar to that, to the original game's title. And also, it just sounds pretty cool to say, Menacing Moon. It sounds like the sort of title that a Zelda game would have. The second one, and this isn't really my favorite, this is The Legend of Zelda Angst of the Moon. Angst basically means like anxiety or something. I don't really like this one because it's the same as like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and this is Angst of the Moon, you know, with the letter, with the words of the in the middle. I'm kind of tired of seeing that naming scheme, so that's why I really don't like this one too much. The next one is The Legend of Zelda The Moon's Crash. Now, I actually noticed that when I wrote this title down, it actually has the same initials as the Minish Cap. It has TMC as the initials, so that's pretty cool, I guess. And also, yeah, it is about the crash of the moon. But the moon, well, I'm not going to spoil the game, but, well, the moon can crash, if that makes sense. It does crash if you don't, you know, reverse the time back. But yeah, so the title doesn't make a lot of sense. I think Menacing Moon is still a better title, but anyway, let's move on to the next one. The next one is The Legend of Zelda Threat of the Moon. I think this is the same as Angst of the Moon. I don't really like this title too much, so let's move on to the next one. The next one is The Legend of Zelda Great Tamina. Now, the reason that Great Tamina is actually a pretty decent title is because, well, it describes the game pretty well. It's set in Tamina, but it's a Great Tamina because it's a bigger version of Tamina. It's sort of like what happened to Hyrule in Breath of the Wild. It's like Tamina's version of that, if that makes sense. So it's gonna still follow all the same kind of stuff that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom had. It's not gonna be like a traditional Zelda or anything like that, just to be clear. Anyway, I think my favorite is still Menacing Moon, which is why I left it at the top of the list. And I'm sure you guys will have like plenty of suggestions for what this game could be called, so please comment down below if you have any suggestions. I know, as I said, I know that, you know, it's not guaranteed that this game will ever even release, ever, but it's still, you know, kind of fun to speculate on the name and what it could be like. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments if you would also love to see a Majora's Mask game in a Breath of the Wild style open world as much as I do. Almost ran out of breath saying that. Obviously, nothing is confirmed at all. We have no clue on what the next Zelda will be, but this is definitely a possibility, considering that there is so much potential for a game like this, especially in a world as expansive as something like Breath of the Wild's type of world or Tears of the Kingdom's type of world. They use the same world, obviously, so if I say Breath of the Wild's type of world, I mean both Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, because they use the same world, basically. It's just that Tears of the Kingdom kind of expanded on the world a lot more. So that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.